Online with Ellie Pineda.
Kung kanina pinag-usapan natin yung teoryang pangmasa na malugod ibinahagi ni Mr. Jefferson, I think it's only necessary na pag-usapan pa natin yung iba pang teorya na parte ng usaping ito. So, I'd like to call on Miss Francesca to discuss high culture theory. Ano ba to?
Yes, Tita Ellie. So, the high culture theory as explained by Dominic Stramati in his book, the Introduction to Theories of Popular Culture kasi offers a way to analyze the connection between culture and power dynamics in society. So, this theory examines how cultural forms link to the upper class or privileged group interact. So, sa madaling salita, ito raw yung kultura na hindi para sa lahat. So, ibig sabihin, kaunti lamang ang pwedeng tumangkilik sa kulturang ito. Pwede rin tawagin kultura ng mga sosyal o kultura ng mga tinatawag na elitista. Renate explains that high culture refers to cultural expressions that have traditionally been highly valued by the wealthy and influential members of society, so such as classic literature, fine arts, and traditional artistic forms. So these cultural forms are typically seen as sophisticated or elegant, and they hold a lot of special importance and prestige. So dito may pinatawag silang high intellectualism.
Ano ba itong high intellectualism to na kailangan nating aralan o intindihin kapag babasahin natin yung high culture theory? May kinalaman ba to sa salitang bakya? Yung salitang pinalakihan natin?
Yes, high intellectualism. So in simple words, ito daw yung karamihan, yung mga tao na matataas, yung IQ o mataas yung level ng posibilidad. So, bali, yung mga elitista daw na ito, iba yung mga pananaw sa kultura na meron sila. So, sabihin na lang natin, halimbawa, may sinasabi nga sila na kapag mahirap ka tapos naging mayaman ka, iba pa rin yung galaw o kilos na nagagawa mo kumpara doon sa mga tao mataas na talagang level ng sosyalidad. So, Tita Ellen, lumalabas dito na kailangan pong magkaroon ng extensive experience or sinasabi nga nila training or reflection, like for example, di ba, like yung mga napapanood natin ng video sa TikTok, which is yung nangyari na Swarovski Opera Ball, na kung saan magsasagawa sila ng isang ball na mahahalata mo na yung mga taong inimbita nila doon ay talagang mataas ang level ng sosyalidad. Dahil iba yung kanilang kultura sa loob ng ball na yun. Diba? Halimbawa na lamang nun, meron silang mahigpit na dress code, meron silang mga hotelions na dapat nilang sundan, which is parang hindi natin maintindihan. Dahil hindi natin sila kapantay o ka-level ng sosyalidad or ng intellectualism. Filipino mass culture, particularly in Bakya culture, which refers to the lower class of popular culture in the Philippines. So, in the essay of Lakaba, it discusses various aspects of Filipino mass culture, including its historical roots, its significance in shaping Filipino identity, and its often dismissed value in contrast to high culture. So, he argues that Filipino mass culture, despite its perceived inferiority, holds intrinsic value and should be appreciated and understood on its own terms. So, Lakaba's essay served as a defense of celebration of Filipino popular culture, challenging the elitist view that dismisses as it inferior or unworthy of serious consideration.
So are you saying that popular culture is there to indoctrinate the people? Na para bang inaakay sila to follow the same set of values to ensure that the continued dominance of the ones or the people in the more privileged positions?
Strenati looks at how some types of culture kasi that are seen as fancy or important are given more attention and support in society. So while other types of culture that are not as popular or mainstream are not as valued. So, diba, during periods of colonial rule, the dominant foreign powers are often impose their own cultural values and preferences on the colonized areas. So, in the realm of art, the cultural expressions of colonizing nation were often elevated as superior or high culture. Diba, while indigenous art, forms were marginalized or suppressed. So, this can create a power imbalance where certain groups have more influence over that considered important or worth paying attention to. And like, for example, na naman dito, traditional art ng native people, diba? European countries, they took parts of Africa. When one country ruled over another country, they would sometimes make the people in that country follow their own rules and ideas about what is good or important. This also happens with art, kasi the art from the ruling country was considered very good and special, but the art from another country was not given much attention or support. So when European countries took over parts of Africa, they thought that African art was not as good as European art. So they forced African artists to follow European artistic styles, which made indigenous art seems less important. This was a way for Europeans to show that they were in charge of and had power over African cultures.
So merong mga rebelde o mga katunggali na lumalaban sa kasalukuyang social order? Ganun ba?
Importante siya for some people na nakita yung kultura as hindi fair sa lahat, di ba? Like, some people might feel left out and treated unfairly because of these cultural norms and see them a way that they are being controlled. So, ayun, minsan hindi nila gusto yung idea ng mga ibang bagay. So, ginagawa nila, nagre-rebelde sila against it. And kasi they want their cultures to be recognized sa museums, sa mga schools, di ba? Gusto nila yung kultura nila included.
Where are we getting at here, Ms. Francesca? Are you suggesting or even implying that high culture theory is directly changing the view of the masses or the people itself?
I think no, Tito Eli. Kasi diba, high culture theory usually does not go against or try to change the people in charge or the most common ways of thinking and acting. So high culture theory often talks about things that the rich and fancy people like and say that they are better than the things that regular people like. So while it might say bad things about popular things, it usually agrees with the usual rules and beliefs instead of trying to change them.
Now that we've talked about the different types of theories and cultures, ganyan, I think they all lead to one determinant thing, is that they all affect the people, the individuals. Mr. Jefferson talked about how the mass culture theory is used, or the masses can be manipulated by someone. Ms. Francesca talked about how the high culture theory influences or dominates the ones in the underprivileged positions. I think Ms. Shell, our last guest for today, has a lot to say something about this.
In reference to the book of Dominic Strinati, An Introduction to Theories of Popular Culture, 2nd edition, there are specific arguments stating that popular culture is not as good as it used to be. Ang first claim na nasabi din doon ay ang mass culture theory is elitist. Elitism in mass culture theory is what is the best state, what everybody should appreciate or see as fine. Kumbaga may standard na dapat ito ang sundin ng lahat ng tao. However, all people do not share the same interest, therefore, hindi lahat makaka-appreciate sa specific thing na yon. For instance, sa art, hindi lahat knowledgeable enough and hindi mapupukaw ang interest ng lahat ng tao. To add, para sa iba, considered yon as waste of time. Elitism usually lacks any kind of sociology. Ayaw ng mga elitista sa mass culture kasi kabaliktaran ito ng standard nila when it comes to aesthetics, because mass culture is considered as manipulable, passive, and exploitable cultural dopes. Dahil dito, halos lahat ng tao ay pwedeng magkaroon ng access sa mass products, especially if it is trendy. But of course, mass-produced equates to less value. Kapag ganito, mabilis at madami ang pag-produce ng products pero hindi na malaki ang magiging worth nun kasi accessible na siya sa lahat ng tao. Contrary to elitism na kadalasang privileged people lang ang may access kaya malaki pa rin ang magiging value or worth. Moving on to the cultural taste, opposite lang din naman ito sa elitism. Gaya nga ng sabi ko kanina, hindi lahat same interest and taste kaya pinaglaban dito na hindi dapat restricted sa isang bagay ang functionality o aesthetic ng bawat tao sa kung anumang standard form ng elitism. Actually, Tito Eli, with the basis of the current generation, hindi na maiiwasan ang mass culture. Never naman talaga siyang naiwasan kahit in the past kasi kung nasaan ang uso, nandun ang mass culture. That's all. Thank you, Tito Eli.
So bago natin tapusin ang usaping ito, I think we all understand that the view of Srinathis on popular culture and mass culture are still somewhat the same, even though they are still relatively different topics and issues. They are both the same in the sense that folk culture and high culture can seep through both of these popular and mass culture, and that even though it can seep to both of them, the difference mainly comes from where they come from. Mass culture comes from the domineering forces. These domineering forces use this culture to give uniform culture in order to gain control, gain profit, while the popular culture is a direct reflection of the individuals. It shows their ideologies, their beliefs, their practices. It is all within their experiences. With that being said, thank you once again for another makabuluhang usapin. I'll see you again next week for another episode of The Bottom Line with Ellie Pineda.